Good morning, Abundant Life Church. This is Pastor Chris, and today we're going to continue our study of John chapter 8, verses 12 down through 30. Jesus is at the Feast of Booths. They're lighting lights. He says, I'm the light of the world, and I'll lead you to God. And the Pharisees say, how do we know this? Well, all we have is your word. We don't have a second witness. And Jesus says, my witness is God. He says, you guys are pretty judgmental. I'm not going to judge anybody. But we know later on in this conversation, Jesus says, I have much to say in judgment of you. So which is it? Is Jesus not going to judge people, or is he? How do we explain what sure feels like Jesus contradicting himself in this argument with the Pharisees? Well, you might say we can just chalk this up to the fact that, everybody's inconsistent. Especially in an argument. You might be trying to think fast, and that's naturally going to make you make mistakes. And hey, come on, Jesus just made a mistake. Well, sorry, but if this is God, and if he's speaking for the Father, he can't afford to be inconsistent. He has to be right in every single thing he says. So you can't really say he was wrong the first time, but he's right the second time, or vice versa. You can't say either one. He's God, which means somehow when he said he's not going to judge anybody, he was correct. And later, when he says he has much to say in judgment, he also has to be correct. How is that possible? You know, I love the story in Acts chapter 15. They're having a big council at Jerusalem. They're arguing over the idea of, do Gentiles have to be circumcised if they want to become Christians? Do they have to become Jews first? And Paul vehemently argues at this council, Gentiles do not have to get circumcised. And he actually wins the fight. Okay, the church's official stance now is Gentiles don't need to get circumcised. And then in Acts chapter 16, the very next chapter, he meets up with Timothy and circumcises him. As odd as that sounds, that wasn't a contradiction. How wasn't that a contradiction? Timothy was half Jewish. And Paul knew if I take a guy with me who has Jewish blood in him and he's not circumcised, all the Jews are going to say, you're trying to say Jews shouldn't get circumcised either. Paul knew in that particular situation, okay, this is one place where circumcision is appropriate. It sounds like he was contradicting himself until you examine all the facts. So, how do we make sense? How do we examine all the facts of what Jesus was saying here? Well, I think the distinction is found in exactly the language that Jesus uses. He says he's not going to judge by human standards. All right, now what does that mean? Well, look at verses. Oh, actually, let's not look at those verses yet. Give me a second here to look at my notes. Remember, this started because they had questioned his claim to be the light of the world. He couldn't be the light of the world like God was the light of the world because he was just a man. Okay, but was he just a man? Now, he was fully human. He had a heart, he had a circulatory system, a respiratory system, all that stuff. He was a human being, flesh and bone. But he was also fully God. He was obviously God. But the religious leaders couldn't see who he actually was because they only had the ability to judge by, wait for it, human standards. They didn't get into spiritual things. Some religious leaders, these guys are. So then our question seems pretty obvious. Why didn't they see that Jesus was the Messiah? And to answer that, hang on a second, my notes are skipping all over the place. To answer that, is the whole point to this entire passage. They couldn't see that God was right there in front of them. This was God in the flesh. This is who Jesus was. They were blind to that. They were spiritually blind. Their human standards of judgment meant they could not conceive of the spiritual. So this idea of fully God, fully man in Jesus was foreign to them. But again, these guys are supposed to be the spiritual leaders. Look at verses 16 now through 20. And 16 through 20 says, if I do judge, my decisions are true because I'm not alone. I stand with the Father who sent me. In your own law it is written that the testimony of two witnesses is true. I am one who testifies for myself. My other witness is the Father who sent me. Then they asked him, Where is your Father? You don't know me or my Father, Jesus replied. If you knew me, you would know my Father also. He spoke these words while teaching in the temple courts near the place where offerings were put. Yet no one seized him because his hour had not yet come. How could they be so spiritually blind that they didn't recognize Jesus was God? They had a problem with Jesus. I mean, despite his miracles, despite his godly teachings, they didn't like him. Why? Well, because the Messiah should have come to them. This is what the Messiah should have done. He should have come to them first. He should have said, Guys, first of all, thank you for being so awesome. You guys are so devout. You keep the law. You are amazing. I owe you one, guys. That's what he should have done. He should have praised them. This guy, Jesus, didn't do any of that. In fact, he told them, You guys need to change. There's the problem. If Jesus says something, but they don't agree, then either Jesus is wrong or they're wrong. Either they should change or Jesus should change. Those are their only two options. Either we're wrong or he is, and guess which option they went with? See, that's spiritual blindness, purposely choosing to ignore and deny what is obviously true, what's right there in front of you, because you don't want to have to change and you don't want to give something up. It was their decision to be spiritually blind. It was their decision to say, hey, you're performing miracles? Sorry, can't see it. You're fulfilling prophecy? Nope, sorry, can't see it. Jesus is scripturally sound. He loves the Father. He's obviously from God. Oh, sorry, still can't see it. I remember once I was having a discussion, not an argument, not a debate, just a discussion with a guy who was an atheist. And we were talking about the credibility of the resurrection. Well, how do I know that the resurrection really happened? I mean, it says so in the Bible. How do I know the Bible wasn't making it up? So I mentioned the Jewish historian Josephus. He was not a Christian. He was not a follower of Jesus, and yet he recorded the claims that there was a resurrection. All right, so a guy who wasn't a follower of Jesus claimed that the disciples, at the very least, said there was a resurrection. Now you got to deal with that claim then. Okay, well, what if Josephus was making it up? Deep down, I think he knew I was right, but it would mean admitting that he was wrong. That's the thing. Have you ever been in an argument or discussion when all of a sudden it dawns on you that you're wrong? What do? That's right, you argue harder. This is what made the Pharisees spiritually blind. Now, we'll talk more about that next time. But till then, have a great day.